It came in at 6:42 a.m., while I was refilling the kettle, half awake, half peaceful. An email. Subject line: Wedding invoice, final reminder. I thought it was a scam. Until I saw the sender, Emma Reeves, my daughter. She hadn't called in months, and yet here it was. An itemized spreadsheet, perfectly color-coded, demanding 132 $180 for her wedding and honeymoon. Venue, designer gown, floral arch, drone footage, luxury retreat in Santorini. And beneath all that, a note in bold, like a nail through my chest. Dad, please handle this before Friday. It's your role, after all. Below it, her signature, not in cursive like her mother taught her, but typed, cold, corporate. Then another email from her fiancé, Noah Grant. Just one line. Given the tension from before, we think it's best you not attend the ceremony. That's when the kettle screamed behind me. The whistle was sharp, but it still couldn't drown the sound of what broke inside. It wasn't the money, it was the price she'd put on belonging. The quiet message that love, in her new world, came with a receipt. I stood by the window as the sea mist crept through the glass, and realized the saddest part of parenthood. Sometimes the child you raised to be strong learns to look down on gentleness. And before I tell you what happened next, help me reach 1,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. It's completely free for you, but it means so much to me. Thank you, truly, for support. The morning light came in pale, cutting through the steam of the kettle that had long stopped whistling. I poured the water anyway, just to hear something familiar in the silence. My hands moved out of habit, mug, spoon, sugar, stir, but my mind stayed on the email. 132,080, not a number, a verdict. I reached for the small wooden box on the shelf, the one Ruth left me before she passed. Inside, resting against a piece of velvet, was her compass pendant. It had stopped working years ago, but she kept it anyway, saying it reminded her that even a broken compass still remembers where north once was. I ran my thumb over the glass, and for a second, I could almost hear her laugh again, the kind that made Emma cover her ears and giggle. When Emma was 8, she used to follow me down to the dock every morning. Hair tangled from sleep, sneakers untied. She'd ask if the ocean ever got tired of coming back. I told her, maybe it just misses the shore. That was our thing, the way we talked about love, through tides and small things. But time doesn't shout when it changes, it just tilts, one small degree at a time. By the time you notice, you're miles from where you meant to be. After Ruth died, Emma stopped coming by the dock. She filled her world with business degrees, internships, and things that came with marble lobbies. I was proud of her, truly. But with every new job title, her voice changed, like she was learning to speak in a language that didn't need softness. Calls became texts. Texts became silence. Still, I tried to keep the bridge open. Birthdays, small visits, quiet dinners when she'd drive up from Boston. She'd sit at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone while I cooked. I'd ask about her work, her plans. She'd smile politely and change the subject. The only time her eyes lit up was when she talked about Noah. He was charming in that effortless way people get when they've never had to earn trust. The first time we met, he shook my hand and looked past me at the view, saying, "Beautiful property. Must be worth a fortune." I remember Ruth's compass hanging from my neck that day, and how heavy it suddenly felt. Later, Emma told me Noah was planning to start his own real estate firm. They needed a small push, a guarantee. Just paperwork, she said. Dad, it's not a loan, it's support. That night, I stayed up reading the documents. The language was polished, the numbers disguised in optimism. My eyes stopped at one clause, a personal collateral line tied to my home. I folded the paper, slid it into the drawer, and told myself I'd deal with it in the morning. But by morning, she had already mailed it signed, with my name forged. I didn't confront her, not then. She was young, in love, terrified of failure. I told myself Ruth would have wanted me to protect her, not punish her. So I covered the damage quietly, closed the account, paid what needed paying. The ocean takes what it takes. I just wanted her to stay afloat. For years after, we lived on the surface. Polite calls, polite lies. Then came Noah's proposal, and suddenly she was back. Laughing, bright, asking if I'd walk her down the aisle. My heart said yes before my mind could breathe. I even started fixing up the house for guests, sanding the porch rail Ruth used to lean on. I didn't know the wedding plans had already become a stage for someone else's show. The venue, lavish. The guest list, 200 people I'd never met. The color scheme, gold and white, she said. Modern but elegant. When she sent me the first draft of the budget, I told her gently it might be too much. She smiled and said, "Dad, you worry too small." I should have known then. That was the first fracture. 2 weeks passed before I drove down to Boston. The sea fog trailed behind me like unfinished thoughts. Emma had said she was too busy to call, but she'd texted me an address for brunch, a place that charged more for coffee than I'd ever spent on lunch. The restaurant sat on a corner of glass and steel. Inside, it was all velvet chairs and people pretending not to look at themselves in reflections. Emma waved me over. She looked beautiful, sharper somehow. The girl who once wore salt in her hair now wore ambition on her skin. "Dad," she smiled. "You made it." I nodded. Took my seat. The waiter appeared before I could breathe. "Sparkling or still?" he asked. Emma answered, "Still." He's simple, simple. I let it slide. Noah arrived 10 minutes late, sunglasses still on indoors. He kissed Emma on the cheek, barely looked at me. "Mr. Reeves," he said, with that practiced charm, "you've got yourself a star here. We're building something big." Emma leaned closer, almost glowing. "Noah just landed another investor," she said, "and he's teaching me so much about financial independence." I smiled faintly. "Financial independence? Sounds expensive." She laughed, but there was a flicker, the kind that says you've crossed an invisible line. Noah poured himself coffee, said lightly, "Well, success has its costs. You of all people should understand that, sir." Sir. The conversation moved like a train I wasn't meant to catch. Words about branding, influence, networks. They used phrases like legacy positioning, as if families were portfolios to manage. When the food came, Emma reached for her phone before her fork. She scrolled, smiled, and said, "We've gone viral, babe. The engagement post hit 50,000 likes." Then she turned the screen toward me. A photo of them at an engagement shoot. Gold dress, champagne light, captioned "Building Our Forever." I noticed the ring. It was my wife's diamond, the one Ruth had left in her jewelry box, wrapped in tissue paper, marked "For Emma, when she's ready." No one had asked me for it. My mouth went dry. "That ring," I said quietly. "You found it?" Emma glanced at it as if she'd forgotten it came from somewhere. "Oh yeah. I thought Mom would want me to wear it." "She would have," I said, "but she would have wanted you to ask." She sighed, exasperated. "Dad, it's not that deep. Don't make this emotional." The waiter came by, smiling too brightly. I nodded for the check. Noah said, "Don't worry, I've got it." And then, the sentence that drew the first true crack between us. "After all, soon it'll all be family money anyway." He said it casually, as if predicting the weather. Emma laughed, maybe to smooth the tension, maybe to believe him. I just sat there, the word family echoing like an insult. Outside, the wind caught my coat as I stepped onto the street. Emma hugged me quickly, like she was late for something important. "Dad, please try to be more supportive, okay? Noah's got plans that could really elevate us." Elevate us. I wanted to tell her love isn't a ladder, it's an anchor. But the words stayed behind my teeth. I watched them drive off in a black car with tinted windows, their reflection ghosting across the glass. Back home, The ocean greeted me with that same low hum, not comforting, not cruel, just constant. I sat on the porch with Ruth's compass in my hand, the metal cool against my palm. It pointed nowhere, as always, but it still felt true. That night, I opened my drawer and found the old papers, the forged signature, the loan that never existed. I hadn't looked at them in years. The edges had curled with time. I placed them beside the wedding invitation that arrived the next morning, engraved in gold, heavy enough to feel like irony. It read, "Together with their families, Emma Grace Reeves and Noah Alexander Grant invite you to celebrate their union. Families, plural." Yet I wasn't invited. I turned the envelope over and saw a small card tucked inside. A payment QR code. Preferred contribution method. I laughed once, quietly, bitterly. Then I stopped, because that was when I realized something colder than disappointment. Emma didn't hate me. She didn't even think of me long enough for that. She'd outgrown guilt. That was when respect quietly left the room. I didn't sleep much that night. The sea was louder than usual, or maybe it was just my thoughts. Every crash of the waves felt like something being erased. I made coffee before dawn, sat at the table, and opened my old leather notebook. It had become my place for truths I couldn't say out loud. On the first blank page I wrote, "Respect left quietly. So will I." It wasn't anger that moved my pen. It was clarity. I started listing things, not feelings, but facts. The loan papers from years ago, the engagement invoice, the forged signature, the ring, the silence. Each item felt like a wave hitting rock, predictable, steady, shaping something underneath. Around noon, I walked to the post office. Grace worked there. She had been Ruth's closest friend, and the kind of woman who could sense lies by how someone breathed. When she saw me, she smiled softly. "You look like a man who's carrying salt instead of sleep." "I might be," I said. We sat at the small break room table, the smell of paper and dust around us. I told her about the invoice, the disinvite, the brunch. I didn't raise my voice. She listened, hands folded, eyes patient. When I mentioned Noah's name, she frowned. "That boy came in here last month, mailed a packet marked property transfer, personal, used Emma's return address." My pulse slowed. "Do you remember where it was sent?" She nodded. "Some law office in the city. I can't tell you more than that, but... Robert, you should check your mail." When I got home, there was indeed a letter waiting, one I had almost thrown out with the catalogs. The envelope smelled faintly of sea air, as if it had soaked through the dock mist. Inside, a folded set of papers and a short note in a font that wasn't Emma's handwriting. "Per mutual understanding, full ownership of the Reeves coastal property is to be transferred upon marriage. Authorized by Emma G. Reeves, acting heir, and Noah A. Grant, spousal proxy." At the bottom, a signature, my own, except it wasn't. The ink had bled slightly near the end, smudged by what looked like a drop of water. I ran my thumb across it. Salt, that was my evidence token, the truth, half drowned. I sat there a long time, staring at the page. There's a kind of stillness that doesn't come from peace, but from restraint. The human instinct is to fight, to shout, to make someone see. But I'd learned from the sea. When the storm is too strong, you lower your sails and wait. So I started planning, not to win, but to understand. The next morning, I took photographs of the document, sealed it in a new envelope, and placed it inside Ruth's old recipe tin. No one ever opened that. It was her secret keeper. Then I called Grace. "Would you be willing to be a witness if I need to prove this letter existed?" She didn't hesitate. Ruth would have wanted me to. That evening, I went down to the dock. The tide was rising. I brought the compass pendant with me, let it rest in my palm under the gray sky. The metal caught a flicker of light before a wave of shadow took it back. "Ruth," I whispered, "you always said the sea gives back what it takes, just not to those who rush it." That became my rule. No confrontation, no rage, just precision. Over the next days, I kept my routine deliberately unchanged. Grocery runs, coffee, small walks to the diner. I wanted Emma and Noah to believe I'd swallowed their silence whole. Then came the invitation update. A new envelope, smaller, glossier. This time it wasn't embossed in gold, but white and silver. Inside, a family newsletter sent to select guests. Their smiling faces above the headline, Reeves Estate, future venue of Grant and Reeves Foundation. Foundation. They were already calling my home a foundation. I took the letter to Grace. She looked at the headline, then at me. They're using your property for collateral before they even own it. I nodded. Yes, but they'll need one thing they don't have, my consent. She leaned back. So what will you do? I smiled faintly. Nothing yet. The ocean doesn't announce its tides. That night, I pulled out the compass pendant again, turning it over and over in my hand. On the back, Ruth had engraved a line years ago. When the wind forgets where to go, follow kindness. I'd forgotten that line until then. Maybe that was her way of reminding me that silence can also be kind, if it leads to truth. Over the next few weeks, I documented everything. Every message, every letter, every shift in Emma's tone. I even started recording brief reflections on my old cassette recorder, my way of keeping time. One night, while replaying one of the recordings, I noticed something strange. In the background of a voicemail Emma had left, I heard Noah's voice. Faint, but clear enough to catch the words. He won't even notice. Old people sign anything. I paused the tape, rewound, listened again. There it was, arrogance, plain and sharp. I copied the recording to a USB drive, labeled it Wind 03. Another wave added to the storm that hadn't yet broken. Grace came by a few days later, carrying a small folder. I asked a friend from the registry office, she said. Seems there's a pending filing for your land title, awaiting your digital signature. I exhaled slowly. They're bold. They're desperate, she corrected. That night, I drafted my own document, short, factual, dated, a statement of ownership and intent to contest any unauthorized transfer. I printed 2 copies, signed one, and stored both in separate places. Then I mailed a copy to my attorney, with no explanation, just a note. Keep this sealed until further notice. The sea will tell you when. I didn't need to expose them yet. Truth, when timed right, becomes justice. Too soon, it just looks like noise. As the days slipped by, I watched the tide rise higher each evening, pushing against the dock posts, testing the ropes. The same way betrayal tests a boundary before it breaks it. By the end of that week, I had everything ready. Evidence, witness, documentation, calm. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was loaded. And as I locked the last drawer, I whispered to the air, my calm will be their storm. It started with an email that wasn't meant for me. A soft ping at 10:47 p.m., a subject line that read, Final Property Clause Approval. I almost deleted it out of habit. Spam, I thought. But the sender was a name I recognized. Noah's lawyer. Inside, a short thread, attachments missing, but the line that froze me said, Once Robert signs the updated clause, transfer can proceed without delay. Emma confirmed he's on board. I stared at the screen, the words swimming slightly. Emma confirmed. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. The next morning, I called Grace. Do you believe in accidents? I asked. She sighed. Only the kind that tell on themselves. I printed the email and slid it beside the salt-stained letter in Ruth's recipe tin. The box was getting heavier, not from paper, but from weight that truth carries before it's told. That afternoon, I decided to call Emma. No accusations, no anger, just a father trying to understand. She picked up on the third ring, cheerful. Dad, I was just thinking of you. Were you? I said. Yeah, We're finalizing some logistics for the ceremony. Everything's coming together beautifully. I let her speak, listening to the rhythm of her excitement. How easily she filled silence with words that didn't land anywhere real. Then I asked quietly, "Did you tell your lawyer I'd signed something recently?" A pause, long enough to count the seconds. "Dad, I don't handle that stuff directly. Noah does most of the paperwork. But he said you confirmed my approval." "Right, because you said you trusted us, remember?" Her tone sharpened, defensive now. "Don't make this a thing, okay? It's just business." Business. That word again. The language that eats families alive. "I see," I said. "Just wanted to be sure." She exhaled, impatient. "Dad, please, everything's fine. We're building a future here, don't ruin it with suspicion." Before I could answer, Noah's voice echoed faintly in the background. "Tell him we'll call later, and that the transfer's handled." The line went dead. I sat there for a while, phone still in hand, until the ocean wind knocked against the window. That sound, soft but persistent, always brought Ruth to mind. She used to say, "Waves don't hide truth. They just wait for the tide to be right." By evening, I found myself walking down to the dock again. The lantern posts flickered in the wind. I took out the compass pendant, watching the moonlight shimmer across its cracked glass. "Still remember where north once was," I whispered. The next day, I drove to the city, not to confront, but to observe. The Grant and Reeves Foundation's name had already been printed on a new office sign downtown. Through the glass, I saw Emma talking to a woman in a navy suit. She looked confident, radiant even. For a second, I almost believed she was happy. Then I noticed Noah in the back, on a call. His posture, hand on his hip, voice too loud, smile too forced, told me everything I needed. The kind of man who believed confidence could bury consequence. I turned to leave but caught a fragment through the slightly open door. "Once we get the deed, the investors are locked. After that, it's our name on the shore." Our name. Not hers. Not mine. His. I walked out into the cold air. Let it sting a little. The truth doesn't always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it seeps through, one overheard word, one careless tone. That night, I couldn't eat. The house felt smaller somehow. Every creak sounded like memory. I poured myself tea, set it beside the old letters. The salt stains had dried into faint white rings. They looked almost like tide marks. Around midnight, the phone buzzed again. A message from Emma. "Dad, are you okay? I hope you're not upset. Noah said you sounded distant." "Distant," I typed, erased, typed again. Finally sent, "I'm fine, the sea's loud tonight." She replied with a heart emoji. Nothing more. The following morning, Grace called. "You might want to see this." She emailed me a screenshot, a public grant application filed under the Grant and Reeves Foundation. It listed donated property assets, coastal estate of Robert Reeves, pending. They were already spending what wasn't theirs. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. The quiet fury that came wasn't fire. It was ice. Sharp, focused, clean. That afternoon, I drafted an email to Emma. Short, careful. Received the foundation notice. Would appreciate transparency before I proceed legally. Dad, no reply that day. Or the next. 3 days later, I got a call. Not from her, but from Noah. His voice oiled with charm. "Robert, hey buddy. Bit of confusion, that grant listing was a clerical thing. You know how these forms are." "Clerical," I said. Yeah, nothing official yet. Emma's been stressed, so I told her I'd handle the boring stuff. You know how women get with weddings, right?" I didn't answer. He laughed too loudly. "Anyway, don't worry about all that paperwork. Once it's filed, everyone benefits. You, us. It's family synergy." "Synergy," I repeated. "That's right. Glad we're on the same page." He hung up before I could correct him. That evening, I went to the shore. The sky was heavy. the kind of blue that hides rain behind politeness. I brought Ruth's compass and the folder with the letters, laid them side by side on the bench. The metal gleamed against the paper. One old, one forged, both now part of the same story. The tide came in slow. I stayed until the first drops started falling. When I got back inside, I noticed the voicemail light blinking. Pressed play. It was Emma, her voice softer than I remembered. "Dad, I know things have gotten complicated. I need you to trust me, okay? Please don't make this harder than it has to be. You raised me to be independent. This is me being that." The message ended with a sigh. And then faintly, barely caught by the recorder, Noah's voice again. "Did you tell him about the clause?" Her whisper, almost inaudible. "He knows. But he won't do anything." I stopped breathing for a moment. It wasn't shock anymore. It was recognition. She knew. She always knew. That was the night the silence changed color. The morning after that voicemail, I woke before sunrise. The sea was gray, still deciding whether to rise or retreat. I understood that feeling. I made tea, opened my notebook, and wrote only 2 words. No confrontation. Then beneath it, precision. That became my plan. Not revenge, not exposure, just the truth, timed right. By noon, I had drafted an email, simple, polite, and impossible to misinterpret. Subject: Clarification meeting. Reeves property transfer. Dear Emma and Noah, it appears some administrative confusion has occurred regarding the coastal property. To prevent further issues, I've arranged a brief review meeting this Sunday at the house. Please bring any relevant documents for confirmation. Grace Porter will be present as witness for neutrality. Love, Dad. I reread it twice before sending. Calm, courteous, disarming. Grace called an hour later. "You really want me there?" "Yes," I said. "You once told me truth doesn't defend itself. It waits to be seen. Help me make sure it's seen." She sighed softly. "Then I'll bring my eyes." Sunday came dressed in sunlight that looked borrowed, too bright for what it had to witness. I cleaned the table near the window, set out 3 chairs, a pot of tea, and in the center, Ruth's compass pendant, next to the evidence token, the letter with the salt stain. It looked like nothing, but it was everything. At 11:00 sharp, a car pulled up. I heard laughter before the engine stopped. Noah stepped out first, sunglasses again, confidence glued to his face. Emma followed, her expression cautious, controlled. "Dad," she said, "this feels unnecessary. Couldn't we just—" "No," I said quietly. "Better to clear it in person." They stepped inside. Noah looked around like a realtor inspecting potential. "Still cozy," he said. "You ever think about modernizing?" Grace, sitting by the window, smiled faintly. "Modern isn't always an upgrade." He didn't seem to notice. I gestured to the table. "Shall we?" We sat. The kettle whistled faintly, like nerves learning to breathe. Emma spoke first. "So, what's all this about?" I slid the folder across the table. "This is the letter I received. It carries my signature, though I didn't write it. The ink bled here, see? Salt water. Probably from the dock air the day it was printed." Noah leaned forward, pretending interest. "That looks like a draft. Nothing binding." Grace's gaze was steady. "Then why does it have the attorney's seal?" For a moment the room tightened. Emma looked between us, then at me. "Dad, you're misunderstanding. Noah's been handling logistics because I'm overwhelmed. He must have mixed up documents." Noah smiled too quickly. "Exactly. All just miscommunication. The deal hasn't gone through. We can fix it." I nodded slowly. "That's good to hear, because I've also sent copies to my attorney. For safekeeping." He blinked. "You what?" "Routine," I said. "When things involve property, it's best to have clarity." Emma's hands clasped in her lap. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was revealing. Grace poured tea quietly. The clink of porcelain was the only sound until Noah cleared his throat. Listen, Robert. Maybe we should talk privately. No need to drag third parties into family matters. She's not a third party, I said. She's my witness. He smiled thinly. Witness to what? To truth, I said. And to respect. Two things that don't survive well in private. Emma shifted in her seat. Dad, please, this is humiliating. No, I said gently. This is clarity. Humiliation only visits the guilty. Her face tightened. You think I'm guilty? I looked at her. Really looked. The way only a father can when he's finally ready to stop rescuing. I think you've forgotten who you are. And I think you've let someone convince you that decency is negotiable. Noah scoffed. That's dramatic. You should be thanking us for trying to secure your legacy. By erasing my name from it? He leaned back, smirking. You can't erase what's already obsolete. Grace's voice cut through the air like quiet thunder. Careful, son. Obsolete things have a habit of outlasting trends. I almost smiled. I stood, walked to the window, looking out toward the sea. You know, I said, Ruth used to tell Emma that a compass isn't about where you are. It's about where you shouldn't go. Once you ignore that, you're lost, even if you're standing still. I turned back. I'd like you both to leave the documents here today. My attorney will contact you next week. Emma's eyes widened. Why? So you can twist it against us? No, I said. So truth can rest on its own legs. It doesn't need me to twist it. Noah rose, agitated. You're making a mistake. I looked him in the eye. No. I made one years ago, when I believed kindness was protection instead of power. The kettle whistled again. Grace reached over and turned off the stove. The sound faded like tension leaving the room. Emma's voice cracked. Dad, please, we just wanted a chance. You don't understand what it's like starting over, trying to build something in this world. I do, I said quietly, but not at the cost of conscience. For the first time, her eyes softened, the child flickering behind the woman, but Noah grabbed her arm gently. Let's go. We don't need this. She hesitated, then followed him toward the door. Before leaving, she turned, voice low. You've changed. Finally, I said. When the door shut, the silence settled deep. Grace exhaled. You handled that like a surgeon. More like a lighthouse, I said. Just stood still until they saw the rocks. She smiled faintly. And if they don't? Then the tide will handle what I can't. We sat there for a while, listening to the ocean beyond the glass. The light moved slowly across the compass pendant, the salt-stained letter, and the untouched tea. Grace rose. I'll put this in the record, she said, tapping her notebook. If they try anything now, it's documented. Thank you, I said. After she left, I stayed by the window. The sea had shifted to silver. I picked up the compass, turned it once in my hand, and felt something subtle. Not peace, but position. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. A message from Emma. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't know he went that far. I'll fix it. I stared at it for a long time, wondering how much of that was truth and how much was damage control. I didn't reply. Some silences are answers. Instead, I printed the message and added it to the file. Then I opened my notebook and wrote one line beneath the others. My calm became their storm. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. Because justice didn't need a voice. It had a signature. The letter from my attorney arrived on a Thursday. Just one page, folded neatly with a short note on top. Meeting confirmed. Both parties agreed to appear. Sunday, 10:00 a.m., at the law office downtown. The morning of, the air carried that particular stillness the coast gets before rain. Everything waiting, nothing moving. I wore my gray jacket, the one Ruth had bought me before Emma's graduation. It still smelled faintly of cedar. Grace met me outside the building. She handed me a folder, her expression steady. They'll expect emotion. Don't give them any. I wasn't planning to, I said. The conference room sat high above the harbor, windows stretched from floor to ceiling. The city below looked small, like a model someone forgot to finish. Emma and Noah were already there. She stood when I entered. He didn't. Dad, she said quietly, thank you for coming. I nodded. It's important. Noah leaned back in his chair. Let's get this over with. We all have better things to do. The attorney, Mr. Hollis, a gray-haired man with the calm of someone who's seen too many families unravel, opened the folder. We're here to review the property transfer documents and clarify ownership claims. He glanced at me. Mr. Reeves, you provided evidence of signature forgery and unauthorized filing. Is that correct? Yes, I said. Noah smirked. Forgery's a strong word. It was a misunderstanding. Hollis looked at him, unblinking. We'll let the evidence determine that. He projected the scanned letter on the screen, my signature blurred at the end, the salt stain visible like a tear that never dried. Mr. Grant, Hollis continued, this document was filed by your firm. Can you explain why it carries a notarization date 2 weeks before Mr. Reeves was informed of the transfer? Noah shifted. Clerical processing. Happens all the time. Interesting, Hollis said. Because the witness signature belongs to a notary who retired last year. The silence that followed was surgical. Grace, sitting behind me, scribbled something in her notebook. Emma's face had gone pale. Noah forced a laugh. Look, maybe there was confusion between versions. Or fabrication, Hollis said evenly. Emma's voice broke in. Please, there's been enough hostility. My father's just being cautious. Hollis turned to her gently. Caution is what keeps people from losing what matters, Ms. Reeves. She swallowed hard. I leaned forward slightly. Emma, I'm not here to humiliate you. I'm here because silence isn't the same as consent. Her eyes met mine, searching for softness, maybe permission. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. I know, I said. But every distance starts with one small step away from truth. Noah scoffed again. Can we focus on the real issue? The property was undervalued anyway. Once the foundation took over, it would have benefited everyone. Everyone? Hollis asked. Or just you? Noah leaned forward, voice hardening. You think an old man knows how to manage prime land? I was trying to create something sustainable. Legacy, investment, future. Grace spoke softly from the corner. A legacy built on theft doesn't last through the next tide. He turned sharply. Who even are you? Someone who remembers when honesty was still fashionable, she said. The tension thickened, but I stayed still. The longer I was silent, the louder the truth became. Hollis cleared his throat. Mr. Reeves, before we proceed, do you have any further evidence to add to the record? I opened the folder slowly. Inside was the evidence token, the original letter, still carrying that faint ring of salt. I placed it on the table. Next to it, a printed transcript of the voicemail. Emma's voice, Noah's whisper. He knows, but he won't do anything. The room went quiet. Even the hum of the city outside seemed to fade. Noah's jaw tightened. That's invasion of privacy. It's proof of pattern, Hollis replied, and intent. Emma looked like she wanted to disappear, her voice small now. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't stop it because I thought I could fix it later. You can't fix what's been sold, I said. Only what's been learned. Tears gathered at the edge of her voice. I didn't want you to hate me. I don't, I said simply. I just can't protect what chooses to lie. Noah slammed his palm on the table. This is ridiculous. He's manipulating you. None of this changes the deal. The investors already— Mr. Grant, Hollis interrupted. As of this morning, all pending filings tied to the Reeves property have been frozen under legal review. Any further attempt to use that deed constitutes fraud. Noah froze. You can't do that. I already did, Hollis said. Your firm's digital records will be subpoenaed by Monday. Emma's breath hitched. Noah. He turned to her, sharp. Don't look at me like that. You're the one who wanted the house. She flinched. I wanted memories, not ownership. The words came out like something finally breaking free. The room felt lighter for a moment. Not because the pain was gone, but because it finally had air. Noah stood abruptly. I'm done here. Call me when the emotions settle. He grabbed his briefcase and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The echo lingered, hollow. Emma sat still. Then she whispered, What happens now? Hollis looked at her gently. Now, we let the truth breathe. He turned to me. Mr. Reeves, would you like to make a final statement for the record? I looked at Emma, then at the compass pendant resting in my palm. It caught a ray of light from the window, gold against gray. Yes, I said quietly. I'd like it noted that I'm not pressing criminal charges. Emma's head snapped up. You're not? No, I said. Because justice isn't punishment, it's correction. Grace's eyes glistened. Hollis nodded slowly. Then this record will reflect your choice. I signed the last document, the pen gliding steady. The ink spread clean, no smudge, no salt. Emma's tears finally fell. I don't deserve that. Maybe not, I said, but forgiveness was never about deserving. She covered her face, sobbing quietly. Hollis handed her a tissue without a word. The meeting adjourned in silence. Outside, the rain had finally started. Grace and I walked together down the steps. She glanced back at the building. That went better than I feared. Truth always does, I said. It just takes the long way. We stood under the awning for a while, watching the rain blur the city lights into streaks of silver. Grace broke the silence. You think she'll come back? I exhaled. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but tides return, even the ones that ran too far. When I got home, the house smelled faintly of rain and old paper. I placed the compass pendant on the table beside Ruth's photograph. The storm outside had softened into drizzle, steady, forgiving. I picked up my notebook and wrote the final line for the day. Justice didn't roar. It signed. And for the first time in years, the air inside my home didn't feel like waiting. It felt like truth. 3 days after the hearing, the sea turned calm again. The kind of calm that comes not from stillness, but from settling. I spent that morning cleaning the house, not because it needed it, but because I did. Every drawer I closed felt like closing a chapter. Every breath, a small repair. Around noon, I saw a car pull into the driveway. Silver sedan. Emma. She stepped out slowly, carrying no bag, no phone, just herself. Smaller somehow. Quieter. The wind lifted her hair the way it used to when she was little. For a second, the years between us folded like a page turning back. She didn't knock. She just stood there at the porch steps. Can I come in? I nodded. Inside, she glanced around, as if rediscovering a language she once spoke. Her eyes lingered on the photograph of Ruth, the compass pendant beside it. You kept everything the same. Some things don't need upgrading, I said. She smiled faintly, then it faded. I wanted to thank you for not pressing charges. I poured her tea. I didn't do it for you. She looked up. Then why? For peace, I said simply. And peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from ending. She nodded, tears already forming. I thought I could control everything, build a life that looked strong, even if it wasn't honest. Ambition's not evil, I said. But it's a poor substitute for integrity. She wiped her eyes. I know. I just wanted to make Mom proud. You did once, I said. You still can. But it starts with accountability, not perfection. Her shoulders trembled. Noah left. Investors pulled out. It's all gone. Everything I built. Then you're free, I said. She looked at me, searching for anger. maybe pity. She found neither. How do you stay so calm? I learned from the sea, I said. It forgives by continuing. Silence filled the room, not heavy, just honest. After a while, she reached into her coat pocket and took out a small velvet pouch. This belongs to you, she said. Inside was Ruth's compass pendant. It was never mine, I said softly. It was yours to remember direction. She shook her head. I lost that right. I placed it back in her hand. Then find it again. But don't bring it to me until it points north. Tears slipped quietly down her face. I don't know how. Start by telling the truth, I said. To yourself, not me. She nodded, a small sound escaping her, something between a sob and relief. I'm sorry, Dad, for all of it. I know, I said, and I believe you. Her eyes widened. Just like that? Forgiveness isn't agreement, I said. It's release. I'm letting go so the past stops owning both of us. She exhaled shakily, her hands gripping the cup for warmth. I don't deserve that kind of grace. Grace doesn't check credentials, I said. It just shows up. Outside, the sky had started to dim, late afternoon melting into amber. The waves were soft now, brushing against the rocks like a lullaby. Emma stood. Can I walk to the dock? Of course, I said. Just be gentle with it. The boards remember wait. She smiled weakly and stepped out. I followed from a distance. She reached the end of the dock and stood there, staring at the horizon, the same place Ruth used to watch the sunsets. When I joined her, she whispered, It's so quiet. It's listening, I said. She turned to me. What's that? I followed her gaze. Hanging from the dock post was a small lantern, the one I used during storms. Its glass was chipped, its metal rusted, but it still worked. I picked it up, struck the match, and lit it. The flame wavered, then steadied. Your mother used to light this every time one of us was late coming home, I said. She said light doesn't chase, it waits. Emma's tears glowed in the reflection. It's beautiful. It's a reminder, I said, setting it gently on the edge of the dock. That no matter how far we drift, there's always a way back, but the walk must be yours. She looked at the flame, then at me. Can I come back? You just did, I said. She stepped forward, hugged me, cautious at first, then tight, like a daughter trying to memorize the shape of forgiveness. When she pulled away, she whispered, Thank you for not giving up on me. I smiled faintly. That's not what fathers do. We just wait differently. The tide touched the dock, whispering against the wood. The lantern's reflection shimmered across the water, one small flame in a wide gray world. Emma turned to leave. I'll visit again soon, she said. Visit, I repeated. Not move back. Not yet. She nodded. Boundaries, she said softly. Exactly. As her car disappeared up the road, the light from the lantern flickered in the wind. But it didn't go out. I stayed until the first stars appeared, letting the sound of the waves fill the space where anger used to live. Peace didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing not to reopen what was already healed. I looked out to the horizon, where the water met the dark. Ruth, I whispered. She's finding her way. And in the faint glow of that small lantern, I understood something simple and final. Peace isn't surrender. It's choice. The next morning, I woke before the sun. The air was cool, touched with salt, and the faint scent of rain washed clean. The house felt lighter somehow, not because anything had changed inside it, but because something had finally left. The weight of waiting. I poured myself coffee and stood by the window. The lantern was still out there on the dock, its small flame now gone. But the glass caught the first thread of dawn. Even unlit, it reflected light. That, I thought, is what forgiveness does. It carries yesterday's glow into today. A soft knock pulled me from the thought. When I opened the door, there was no one, only an envelope taped to the porch railing. My name written in Emma's handwriting, uneven, hesitant. Inside, a single page. Dad, I don't have much left, but I have honesty now. I'm starting over. I sold my car, moved into a small apartment near the harbor. Grace helped me find work at the post office. I see what you meant. Peace isn't about what you own. It's what you stop fighting for. I'll come home when I can face the tide without guilt. Until then, thank you for keeping a light on. Love, Emma. I folded the letter, felt its warmth even through the paper. Then I walked down to the dock. The boards creaked underfoot, remembering. The sea was calm, the kind of blue that carries no apology, just depth. I picked up the lantern, wiped away a thin layer of salt, and relit it. The flame rose steady, soft, unhurried. For a while I just stood there, watching the light tremble against the morning breeze. The world looked fragile and new again. In the distance, a fishing boat hummed across the water. The sound mixed with the low call of gulls and the rhythm of waves. Ordinary sounds, yet somehow they felt sacred. I took out my notebook, the same one where I'd written respect left quietly. On the last page I wrote, forgiveness returned quietly too. I closed it, placed it back on the table by Ruth's photograph. The compass pendant hung beside it now, still pointing nowhere. But maybe that was the point. Some things aren't meant to direct us, only to remind us how far we've come. The kettle began to whistle softly behind me. I poured a second cup of coffee out of habit, then smiled. The house had been quiet for too long. Maybe it was time to fill it again, with warmth, not noise. As I stepped back out to the porch, the first light broke through the clouds. It spilled across the railing, across the old wooden floorboards, and finally, across the lantern on the dock, turning its glass gold. I thought of Emma's words. Thank you for keeping a light on. I whispered to the sea, to Ruth, to whoever might be listening. It's still burning. Then I sat down, breathed in the morning air, and let peace do what it was meant to do. Stay. Because forgiveness rebuilds more than revenge ever could. If this story touched you, tell me what you felt. Would you have forgiven her or walked away? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might be what someone else needs to heal today. And before you go, please subscribe to Rebuild with Robert. It's completely free for you, but it helps me keep telling stories where pain finds peace. Thank you, truly, for listening, for feeling, and for believing that kindness still matters.